Hello and welcome to another Digital Dimensions CADcast. I'll be your host, Joseph Richter, and today we're going to talk about SolidWorks 2013 What's New? eDrawings. On the agenda today for SolidWorks eDrawings 2013, as you know, SolidWorks 2013 enhancements included the ability to generate multiple exploded views per configuration. Well, now eDrawings 2013 has the ability to view those multiple exploded views per config. Along with that, eDrawings 2013 now has the ability to save out executable and zip files in the 64-bit version of the viewer to take advantage of 64-bit hardware. Another enhancement with regard to eDrawings is if you open a native SolidWorks drawing file in eDrawings, we can mark it up, save the SolidWorks drawing file in eDrawings, and then open it in SolidWorks, and your eDrawing markups will be available. In addition to that, we can now import eDrawing markups directly into our SolidWorks drawings. We now have full support for stereographic viewing in SolidWorks eDrawings, provided you have the appropriate hardware. And with regard to eDrawings on a Mac, the viewer has a few operating system support changes that I will review. And finally, eDrawings and eDrawings Professional are now available for the iPad and the iPhone. And first up for SolidWorks eDrawings 2013 What's New is the support for multiple exploded views per configuration. One of the highlighted enhancements to SolidWorks 2013 is now the ability to generate multiple exploded views per configuration in both your multi-body part files and your assemblies. And next up for SolidWorks eDrawings 2013, we now have the ability to save off a 64-bit executable or a 64-bit zip file. This will basically generate an eDrawings file utilizing the 64-bit version of the eDrawings viewer. By doing so, you will then be able to take advantage of 64-bit system resources. Now, keep in mind when you save off a 64-bit version of this executable, this will only function on a 64-bit system. And with that, let's go into SolidWorks to take a look at this. Over here in SolidWorks 2013, one of the highlighted enhancements is the ability to now generate multiple exploded views per configuration. So here you can see that I have one explode view and two explode views, both in the same configuration. In SolidWorks 2012 and prior, you would have been required to have had a separate configuration per explode view. So here, if I want to generate build instructions from explode views, I'm now able to do that all underneath the same configuration. In order for these explode views to show up in your eDrawings file, simply go to File, Publish to eDrawings, All Configurations, and from your eDrawings file, simply go over to your explode views and you'll be able to see all of your explode views based on the configuration. So my other configuration had multiple explodes, etc. Last configuration, again multiple explodes. And then the other added benefit of SolidWorks eDrawings 2013 is the ability to save as a 64-bit executable or a 64-bit zip file. This will save the 64-bit version of the eDrawings viewer with your eDrawings file. Keep in mind that when you do this, these will only open on 64-bit systems. So if you're not sure what hardware your client has, then I would recommend saving out as a 32-bit system version, or just send them the eDrawings eAssembly or ePart file and ask them to download the viewer from eDrawingsViewer.com. And with that, let's get back to the slideshow. And the next item on the agenda is the ability to save eDrawing markups when opening a native SolidWorks drawing file. So in other words, from eDrawings, if you manage to get a hold of and open the native SolidWorks drawing file, add some markups to that drawing file, when you save it, the next time that SolidWorks drawing is opened in SolidWorks, those eDrawing markups will now show up in your drawing file. Now in SolidWorks 2012 eDrawings and prior, in order to utilize these eDrawing markups, you had to open eDrawings viewer and your SolidWorks drawing file side by side, and then you could read the markups and then make the appropriate changes in the SolidWorks drawing file. Well, now in eDrawings 2013 we'll have the ability to see those markups right inside of SolidWorks on top of the drawing that we need to modify. In addition to that, if you had sent out an eDrawing file to get feedback on, you can take the eDrawing markup files that people save out of eDrawings, and you can now insert those eDrawing markup files right into your SolidWorks drawing inside of SolidWorks. So I think this new enhancement of making eDrawing markups visible in our SolidWorks drawing files is going to make eDrawing markup capability much more valuable. Back over here in SolidWorks eDrawings 2013, if you go to open a native SolidWorks file, specifically our SolidWorks drawing file, we now have the ability to add markups and save it with the SolidWorks drawing file. So for example, as I zoom in here, maybe I notice that we're missing the exhaust port, and perhaps when I take a look at this, I notice that this plow should probably be lowered to clear the track of snow. And then on closer look at the design, perhaps I notice that there's a blind spot here that I want to make note of. And once I've made all of my markups, keep in mind that in 2012 and prior, once you've made your markups, you would go into File, Save Markup in order to save that markup file. And in 2012 and prior, once you gathered all of the markups from all of your collaborators in eDrawings, you would go File, Open Markup, and then Import Markup Files. Now, I'm going to go ahead and save this SolidWorks drawing and close eDrawings. And then back over in SolidWorks 2013, I will reopen that drawing file. And you will notice that my eDrawing markups now show up in the native SolidWorks interface. So in SolidWorks 2012 and prior, you would have had to open the eDrawing file, open the markups, and then compare it maybe on a double monitor type situation to make your changes to the drawing or the design. In addition to opening the native SolidWorks drawing file in eDrawings, I mentioned that you could save a markup from an eDrawing file. So in this example, I will go ahead and insert the eDrawing markup file from my collaborator Enrique, who had some comments on this design. So as I import those eDrawing markups, you can see his comments. And in fact, you could right-click and zoom to that markup view, but here I can see where he's made a comment, and he's mentioning to revisit the front end of the design and to test the canopy for 50 pounds. Looks like Enrique also says that this needs to withstand a maximum stress test of 5 pounds. And then over here, it looks like he's concerned about the brightness of the lights. So with SolidWorks 2013 eDrawings, the ability to save markups directly on your SolidWorks file, as well as in SolidWorks Drawings, the ability to now insert our eDrawing markups is going to make eDrawings a much more efficient communication tool in your design process. And with that, let's get back to the slideshow. And now in SolidWorks eDrawings 2013, we have full support for stereographic viewing. So in other words, as long as you have the right equipment, that would be a compatible video card, a pair of 3D glasses, and a 3D Vision ready monitor, you can enable stereographic viewing in eDrawings to view your SolidWorks models in true 3D. So this is similar technology to a 3D TV that you may have in your home. Keep in mind that stereographic viewing is currently only available in eDrawings and not in SolidWorks. And with that, let me show you how to enable this. And back over here in SolidWorks eDrawings 2013, as mentioned, you will need to go into Tools, Options, and enable stereographic viewing before you can use this. Keep in mind that it needs an improved graphics card capable of supporting stereographic viewing. To learn more, simply click on Help, and from SolidWorks eDrawings Help, simply go down to Display Features in eDrawings, and then click on Stereographic Viewing. This again mentions that eDrawings supports stereographic viewing of your models. It mentions how to enable it, and then to use stereographic viewing again, you will require a supported monitor, graphics card, and 3D glasses. For more information, see the NVIDIA website, and that hyperlink takes us directly over here. NVIDIA 3D Vision Pro for SolidWorks and eDrawings, and it describes what's required. So again, it requires a certified graphics card that's capable, as well as your 3D glasses and a 3D Vision ready monitor, as well as how to enable it. And with that, let's get back to the slideshow. And for SolidWorks eDrawings 2013 on Mac, there's some version support changes that need to be noted. eDrawings 2013 is now supported on Mac OS 10.7. However, eDrawings is no longer supported on Mac OS 10.4, Mac OS 10.5, or PowerPC. SolidWorks eDrawings 2013 as well as SolidWorks eDrawings 2013 Professional are both now available for the iPhone and the iPad. So head on over to the iTunes Store to check out this program for your favorite device. And over here in the iTunes Store, simply search for eDrawings, and you will find the iPhone and iPad versions of eDrawings and eDrawings Professional so that you can look at SolidWorks on your favorite device. And in fact, while you're over here in the iTunes Store, you might want to check out our podcast, SolidWorks Heard, and subscribe. SolidWorks Heard is DDI's podcast, hosted by Lou Gallo. And with that, let's go over to the iPad to take a look at this. And from my iPad here, I'll go ahead and launch eDrawings. And from eDrawings, the first screen that opens is the eDrawings file browser. Now keep in mind, in order to get your own files onto the iPad, you will need to email them to yourself and then open your email on your iPad, and then you'll be able to right click on that attachment and open in eDrawings, or download them from an FTP site like Dropbox. And from my file browser, I'll go ahead and launch a native SolidWorks drawing. And if you happen to open a drawing with multiple sheets, in order to gain access to the additional sheets, simply click on this icon here, and then you could access them from here. My drawing only has one sheet, so I'll go ahead and open another file. So as I return back to the file browser, I'd like to go ahead and talk about the tools that are available in eDrawings by launching this assembly. Okay, so in standard eDrawings, we have the ability to view the assembly tree as well as the configurations if I wanted to, and it lists all the parts. Keep in mind, you could select on a component and isolate it or hide it, and if you wanted to change the view, you can come over here to your view icon and access your standard views. And then if my current configuration had an explode, I could toggle the exploded state, or I could return home or play animations of standard views. But I'd like to go ahead and talk about eDrawings Professional with all the goodies in it. So I'm going to return to the home and then launch eDrawings Professional. And from my eDrawings Professional file browser, I'll go ahead and browse my eDrawing file of this train. And one of the goodies that comes with eDrawings Professional is the ability to mark up. And let's say I want to add a note comment here, and I want to make mention that that blind spot is still a problem, and I might want to put an arrow here as well as have a cloud around my note. So I'll specify done. And then if you want to check out the history of your comments, you can click on this icon here where we were accessing multiple sheets on a multi-sheet drawing. And then when you click on this pencil icon, this gives you the history of your comments. And then from here, let's go ahead and check out another file. I'm going to go ahead and open up this Christmas train. And from here, the other goodie that comes packaged with eDrawings Professional is the ability to measure. And with Measure Tool, I'll go ahead and measure between faces. Maybe I want to measure between this face and this face here. And then the other great tool that comes with eDrawings Pro is the ability to section the model. And if you wanted to, you could switch the section cutting plane. And then if you wanted to move that cutting plane, you could drag this slider here. And then from here, I'm going to open yet another file. So I'll go back and we'll talk about this assembly again. And from the assembly, just like standard eDrawings, I can go ahead and take a look at the assembly tree as well as the standard views. And this time around, I will actually access a configuration. And if I wanted to switch configs, just click the configuration you want to show. And then if that configuration had an explode on it, you could toggle the explode. And then if you wanted to close this pane here, just click on the arrows. And then if you wanted to maximize the viewing area, you can hide your tools. And then if you wanted to show your tools again, you could toggle that same icon. And then if I wanted to save this eDrawing file, you can go to here. We could save the image, we could email the file, or email the image. And then if I click on information, I could find out about eDrawings. Maybe go back to information and check out the settings. Under settings, we have general settings. Under general settings, we have the ability to specify whether or not it uses dynamic view animations and whether or not it shows shadows. Maybe I'll go back to my settings and then talk about my markup settings. I have the ability to specify the information that's stored with the comments that I make from my iPad. And then I'll head back out to settings, back to information, and then of course you can click on help. And here's some screenshots of eDrawings on the iPhone. You can see it looks very similar. So when you buy the eDrawings or eDrawings Professional for the iPad, you will also be able to download the same application for your iPhone. And so here we can see the home screen, the launch page for eDrawings, as well as the file browser. And then here's an example of an open assembly with the tools hidden for maximum view, and then finally the eDrawing tools. And obviously on the iPhone you don't have the same screen real estate that you do on the iPad, but at least you'll have eDrawings on the go. Thanks again for joining me on another DDI CADcast. I'm your host, Joseph Richter. To find more tech tips and CADcast, please visit us at ddicad.com.